Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben, and today we're going deep into the mind of Kang Sae-byeok, Squid Game's most powerful character. Before we begin, just a quick note, do make sure you're subscribed to our East Asian drama and anime channel, Generation Uchi. We have lots of Squid Game content over there, including a video on Han Min-yo, the most misunderstood character in Squid Game, either out right now or within the next day or so. So go ahead and check that out. Anyway, Sae-byeok is a North Korean defector whose ornery manner, we assume from very early on in the series, is attributable to her harrowing life experiences, especially in risking her life and leaving everything she knows behind to seek a better life south of the 38th parallel. Yet, quiet and cagey as Sae-byeok is, she still remains a bit of a mystery to the average viewer. So today we need to ask, what's behind her hardened facade? What explains her actions in the show? And what are we supposed to take from the totality of her story? Ultimately, I think hers is a tale of a buoyant soul reduced to its grimmest parts through the medium of cruel experience. Our introduction to Sae-byeok does little to spin her in a positive light. We meet her, albeit unknowingly, amidst her successful attempt to pickpocket an oblivious and otherwise preoccupied Gi-hun. She's a petty criminal, but we're pretty immediately made to sympathize with her when inside the game arena, a more ruthless baddie, Duk-soo, begins to physically accost her, and Gi-hun follows along in similar, though less aggressive fashion. Both of these grown men put their hands on her in this moment, show her little mercy, and think not of her welfare or the motivations for her underhanded actions. However, before we can work up a single tear in her name, we come to find out that actually she herself is pretty vicious, or at least it seems that way.
지금 한 대 더 쳐줄까 네 뒤통수?
하지마.
떨지 마 병신아. 그러다 걸리면 죽어.
She can handle herself, and her actions towards Duk-soo in the red light green light game don't exactly paint her as a saintly actor. Rather, she reads as rather unfriendly. And then, when given the chance to leave the competition after it becomes clear to the participants that death is a likely outcome of the games, she votes to stay in. Thus, should we really feel bad for her? But then we come to understand why she's so harsh-hearted, so felonious in action and bellicose. She has a little brother to take care of, Chol, and she's promised him that she'll see to it that their parents back in North Korea make it safely to the south and reunite with them by next year.
내년엔 우리 다 같이 모여서 한 집에서 살게 될 거다.
Of course, as Sae-byeok well knows, this is an empty promise on her part, as their father is dead. He was shot during the course of his journey out of North Korea. She loves her brother, doesn't want him to hurt, and especially given the apparent inhospitable nature of the orphanage he lives at, she's all he has. You'll recall back in the first episode of the show, Gi-hun makes a promise to his daughter with a similar deadline.
내년 생일에는 진짜 좋은 선물을 사줄게. 가영 약속.
These pledges aren't intentionally empty. Even if they don't know if they can live up to them, both Sae-byeok and Gi-hun are hopeful that they will live up to their word. They are hopeful that things will be better next year, somehow, some way. And it's not insignificant that Sae-byeok specifically is on some level still optimistic about her life. Sae-byeok's softness in this scene and the loving embrace that closes it out contrasts sharply with her actions and attitude the next time we see her. She meets up with this sleazy fellow who claims he can facilitate the defection of her mother to South Korea. This is the market's answer to her problem. The crooked arise to fulfill jobs the principled won't. Criminals are incentivized to take advantage of desperate people like Sae-byeok, but at least there's someone willing to take on her quest, I suppose.
그래서 얼만데?
최소한 4천 이상은 있어야.
However, when this man announces the steep price Sae-byeok will have to pay to procure his services, she throws hot coffee in his face without a second thought and presses a knife to his throat as a subtly threatening gesture to accompany her verbalized threat on his life.
돈 구해온다. 한 번 더 나 속이면 다음에 무조건 네 목부터 딸 거야.
Why does she attack him? Well, we know that, I suppose. He lost or stole her money the first time around and now is trying to raise his price. I guess the right question is, why is she like this? And what are we to make of her violent actions? Well, think about her plight. She wants to rescue her family, but she has no lawful means by which to do so. What is the North Korean defector supposed to do? Saving her family is understandably her number one priority. It's probably all she can think about, everything she worries about. The only option she has is to descend into the underworld and deal with unsavory figures. There's no nice people operating in the people smuggling trade, and there's no safe humanitarian path out of North Korea. Stay or leave, North Koreans will suffer. That is their plight in this reality. It's just that the end of one path, the road out, leaves them reason to hope. Sae-byeok understands this depraved binary because she's been through it. And now when faced with a choice between living safe and sound above ground in South Korea, but leaving her mother behind, and saving her mother but putting herself in danger to do so, she doesn't hesitate to make her decision. This isn't normally the case, but sometimes in order to do something good, you have to do something bad first. You have to become bad. I am vengeance. The point is, Sae-byeok can't call the police to report this man for cheating her. She has to deal with her problems herself, thus her only option really is violence, because violence is the language the wicked speak. This explains the version of Sae-byeok we meet in Squid Game. She's not churlish or combative by nature. I mean, she gets scared of a little rat scurrying through the vents. We also hear her breathing heavily, eyes wide with terror, during the brawl in the dark that was initiated by Duck-soo's gang. I think it's thus safe to say she's probably scared of some of the degenerate figures she deals with in her everyday life, as well as in the competition. However, she knows that matching the pugnacity and violence of those around her in the darkest parts of society will win her respect and scare off predators. In this way, she's very brave because, though fearful, she does not blink in the face of her enemies.
내가 지나간 일은 다 잊고 받아줄 테니까 내 밑으로 들어와. 원래 우리 한 팀으로 꽤 괜찮았잖아. 응?
아직도 어세냐?
After she refuses to back down to Duck-soo in the first game, and on the contrary hits back, he entreats her to join his gang. She wins his respect not by charming him, but by matching his iniquity. Of course, she refuses his invitation because at this point in her life, she has no capacity to trust anyone. There's a moment very early on in the show which demonstrates how Sae-byeok has become so distrustful of man. After the participants vote to end the game, she's dropped off on the street along with Gi-hun.
자, 나도 빨리 좀. 자,
그 나이에 순진한 거야, 멍청한 거야? 당신 풀어주면 돈 내놓으라고 나한테 뭐라고 할 거잖아.
She refuses to untie him, even after he helps her escape her binds, because she thinks that he will immediately come after her for the money she stole from him. He promises he won't, and she eventually relents, cutting his hands free. Unfortunately, though, Gi-hun does not live up to his word.
너 이리 와. 내 돈 내놔. 내 돈 내놔.
Gi-hun's gripe is somewhat justified, I suppose, but gosh, this isn't gonna help Sae-byeok learn to trust others. This is a less serious version of something she has experienced time and time again. People tell her they're going to do one thing, swear it as a matter of fact, and then end up doing another, usually something to her detriment. It's no wonder she prefers to just be alone. Gi-hun does attempt to make amends with her, though, throughout the rest of the show. He watches out for her and invites her to join his group. He seems to want to foster her ability to trust.
난 사람 안 믿어. 이런 데까지 기어들어온 인간들은 더 못 믿고.
원래 사람은 믿을만해서 믿는 게 아니야. 안 그러면 기댈 데가 없으니까 믿는 거지.
There's a few things to take from this little back and forth. First, Sae-byeok has also ended up in a quote-unquote place like this. However, I don't think she's excluding herself from condemnation. Rather, I think she also means to imply that she, by definition of being there, is also not trustworthy and of low moral standing. She has been sullied by the world. Second, on some level, I think Sae-byeok already knows that sometimes she just has to trust people, lean on people she may not want to. I mean, she's done this many times during the course of her trials and tribulations vis-a-vis North Korea. But maybe she still needs to accept that trust always requires some level of faith. Real trust means exposing herself to others, and that she'll never have a guarantee that someone won't betray her. Third, and most important of all, Gi-hun notices that Sae-byeok prefers to make things harder for herself and may even be willing to get herself killed before she's willing to open herself up and trust other people. She doesn't want to be screwed over again. That's how shaken her faith in humanity is. And her faith becomes a primary issue of Gi-hun's concern as he tries to restore it during the competition. During the night brawl, she runs to Gi-hun for help. And though this happens amidst a hellish scene, it's a beautiful moment. She makes herself vulnerable to Gi-hun. She tries to trust him because she still wants to live. She still wants to try and make it.
좀 줄이면 너도 좋잖아.
얘도 우리 편이거든.
And here, Gi-hun's refusal to turn his back on her when Deok-soo tries to convince him to is a pivotal event for Sae-byeok. It moves her, only a bit, but in a positive direction. From here, she starts to let her guard down, first by sharing her name, though yes, reluctantly, with the members of Gi-hun's team.
강세벽.
새벽.
She also approaches fellow solitudinarian Ji-young before the tug-of-war game and invites her to join her team. Why? She sees herself in Ji-young, and thus assumes that she's too prideful and not trusting enough to find a group on her own. Now that some of Sae-byeok's faith in man has been restored, she tries to pass the good feelings on. However, something happens during the tug-of-war game that seems to set Sae-byeok back a bit.
너 이름이 뭐냐?
이름은 알아서 뭐하게.
이름까지 뭐하겠냐? 부르지?
부르지 마.
All of a sudden, she returns to her cold disposition and spurns Ji-young's attempts to engage her in friendly conversation. And then back in the main room, she announces to her team members that she doesn't trust them.
당신들 나 믿어? 난 당신들 못 믿는데.
Cynical and angry she is again. She even makes Gi-hun a target of her antipathy towards humankind.
고맙다. 물.
그냥 준 거 아니야. 내일 물 받으면 갚아.
I think perhaps the tug-of-war game reminds her of the stakes of the competition and what the players within it are willing to do to others. Granted, the teams are forced to kill to survive, but the game still prompts Sae-byeok to be mindful of the blood on everyone's hands. She's let herself get too cozy with the other players, and now she has to pull back. She may have retreated into reclusivity in full too, were it not for Ji-young. During the partner selection segment of the marbles game, Ji-young approaches Sae-byeok this time and asks to be her partner, something which Sae-byeok is hesitant to agree to.
내가 왜?
그럼 저런 꼰대들한테나 매달릴 거야?
쪽팔리게? 쪽팔린 게 문제야? 난 무조건 이겨야 돼.
The thing is, Sae-byeok will not do whatever it takes to win. We know this already. She'd rather lose than invest her faith in others, and she'd rather go partnerless than beg for help. Ji-young understands this, and Sae-byeok knows Ji-young is her spiritual kin, and thus, though she won't admit it, she feels safe with her, or at least she needs not put up the whole guard in Ji-young's midst. Now, I'm sure you're expecting a long diatribe on the conversation the two women have on the steps inside the marbles game. However, I'm going to save a full analysis of this dialogue for a dedicated video on Ji-young, because I think it reveals more about her than her grumpier companion. That said, there is importance in this conversation for Sae-byeok. Ji-young gets her to open up and talk about real things.
아버지는 강을 건너다 총에 맞아 강물에 떠내려갔고 어머니는 중국에서 공안들한테 잡혀서 다시 북으로 끌려갔고
Sae-byeok starts to crack when her human side is explored, which is probably part of the reason she keeps it so hidden behind a tough exterior in the first place. Ji-young needs Sae-byeok to make herself vulnerable so the two can connect on their commonalities in essence rather than an outward personality.
뭐 어디 가고 싶은 데라든지.
제주도
제주도?
Ji-young even gets Sae-byeok talking about her hopes and dreams. She finds the optimism in her, and well, this is important to Ji-young for other reasons we will discuss in the video on her, but for our purposes right now, we get to see Sae-byeok in human form. Sae-byeok finds her trust in man restored once again, denoted as always by the revealing of her name.
새벽이야.
뭐가?
내 이름.
Ji-young does Sae-byeok a real solid in this game. First, she keeps her promise to her to make sure she wins. Yeah, Sae-byeok doesn't want her to have to die, but whether she likes it or not, it's significant that Ji-young promises Sae-byeok will win and follows through on that promise.
이거냐? 무조건 이기게 해준다는 게?
Even more importantly, and even more to Sae-byeok's chagrin, but ultimate benefit, Ji-young makes it clear that she loses the game intentionally. She purposely gives up her life for Sae-byeok. She gives her an unavoidable reason to have faith in humanity and to trust others, for what greater act of sincerity and selflessness is there than to sacrifice one's life for another?
쉽게 좀 지게 해줘라. 혼자 개꿈 잡지 말고 다시 던지라고!
Sae-byeok becomes irate in response to Ji-young's action. But why? What does she want from her? Does she want Ji-young to win, an outcome that would result in her own death? It's one or the other after all. No. I think that Sae-byeok is angry, hysterical even here, for a couple of reasons. First, she's come to care about Ji-young and doesn't want to lose her. And second, if she accepts Ji-young's bad throw as legitimate, then she has to change her entire perception of the world. She has to accept that someone is not only trustworthy, but is willing to give their life for her. Ji-young's actions here break Sae-byeok, not for the worse, but for the better. Her anger and tears are those of shock, shock that leads to transformation. She mourns her friend, but gains a reason to believe in people again. During the next game, Glass Stepping Stones, Sae-byeok watches Sang-woo kill another participant when it's probably not absolutely necessary to do so. She's shocked at this occurrence, and it shows that she was right earlier to have reservations about trusting the other members in her group. She then makes it to the other side of all the stones successfully, and the entire bridge erupts in an explosion, sending glass shards everywhere, one of which punctures Sae-byeok's abdomen, and perhaps here we can take a second to consider the symbolism of a North Korean safely making it across a path fraught with danger, only to end up doomed on the other side, where she had been promised safety. But I digress. Following the game, Sae-byeok does appear to have reverted to distrust just a bit. She doesn't clue anyone into the gravity of her wound, and when Gi-hun approaches her as she sleeps, she quickly comes to and pulls out her knife. At this point, it seems that something has thrown off her progress again. Perhaps it's Sang-woo's maliciousness, or maybe it's the unfair way in which she was wounded, or then again, maybe it's the knives each player was provided with at the finalist dinner. However, thanks in part to Gi-hun's reassurance, she proves she hasn't turned dark. She even demonstrates a completely newfound sense of humanity and morality.
그러지 마. 아저씨는 그런 사람 아니잖아.
She prevents Gi-hun from killing Sang-woo, appealing to his sense of goodness. Of course, Sae-byeok then begins to succumb to her wounds, And while Gi-hun is distracted seeking help, Sang-woo sneaks up and murders her. She dies the way I imagine she most fears, at the hand of her fellow man. Just like so many North Koreans, she's born into abominable cruelty, privy to utmost suffering, and confronted with the bleakest of choices, and to her end, finds no justice in this life. Yet, she fights through unimaginable obstacles. She makes it through so much and never loses hope. There's this sort of sad moment in her final conversation with Gi-hun, her last conversation in life, in which she rues all of the promises she's made to her little brother. Promises she's tried to keep, but that she won't keep.
돈 벌면 데리러 가기로 했어. 엄마도 데리고 오고.
I guess if this is the last thing we remember about her, then she's failed. And maybe if we're speaking philosophically, in fact, she has. But spiritually, she triumphs, if that means anything to anyone. There are many times she takes one step forward and 2 steps back during the course of the show. But by the end, her faith in man has been restored, and she doesn't lose it. Even though she watches Sang-woo kill another man in cold blood, she still chooses to stop Gi-hun from killing him. She sees a higher purpose to morality beyond just practical outcomes. She speaks to who people are fundamentally. She speaks to the soul, and I think in this way, she triumphs. Her essence finds its way to the surface ere death does her part, and even if we discount speculation about mystical things that may ensue her passing, I think that the hope and faith she finds on the way out speaks well for the rest of us. Anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed my take on Sae-byeok. I was tired when I recorded it, so if my voice sounded limp, I do apologize. Still, if you did enjoy the video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And remember to subscribe to this channel and hit that damn notification bell so you don't miss a damn thing. And lastly, I just want to take a quick moment to let you know about a brand new YouTube course British Ben is offering, which teaches aspiring YouTubers the methods we used to build 9 YouTube channels which boast millions of subscribers. So if you're interested in a free preview of the course, do click the link below and check out our Go Viral Masterclass. For now though, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.